Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of My Fiber Fun. Well, happy Sunday, you guys. This is our regular day for the video, so I'm trying to keep on track here. I'm actually sporting another shawl today. This one was my mother's prayer shawl, and it came from a pattern or a tutorial from Creative Grandma, and it was called the something hugs, gentle hugs or something hugs prayer shawl. So if you go to Creative Grandma's videos, just pull up prayer shawl Creative Grandma, and this particular tutorial will come up, and I really like it. It was perfect. And so this was for my mom so that when her friends would come to visit her, they could wear it, or sometimes I would drape it across my mother's shoulders if she was sitting in a chair, excuse me, in her cardiac chair or something like that. And so after she passed, of course, it's mine now. So I Q-ified it, hippified it. So I've got a Q there. Let's see. The word soul, I thought that was cute. It's a little button. Excuse me, that's Oklahoma starting up. Then, of course, the cross. Another cross with the little dove on it to represent my mother. A money bag for prosperity. I thought the little feet were cute. And last but not least, my happy face. Okay, so that's how I decorated this shawl. And anytime I get any more hippie stuff, I have some buttons in there, some hippie buttons, but they're kind of big. I said they wouldn't go well. So I would go with something, with the little clasp on the back. So I haven't found anything since, but if I do, then it will be added to this shawl. I'll start this side of it and then get it even and then just go all the way down. Okay, that's preliminary number one. This video, second thing, before I get into the reason for this video. Yes, I frogged the blanket. I decided, shut up, Oklahoma, please. I'm embarrassed, okay? It's just, he's noisy today. Anyway, I decided I didn't want to take that long to make a lap blanket. I need one now. I can get one done in a couple of days with this yarn. So what I'm going to do is I'm getting ready to start it over. First of all, when I measured it, when I was using the half double crochet herringbone stitch, I measured it after two balls of it, and it measured out to, it was either 8 or 9, no, it was 10 inches. It measured out, two balls of it measured out to 10 inches. So then I counted it up with I have the 12 balls of this, and then I have the 3 balls of the darker. So I just counted by twos. So 10, 20, 30, that's 6 balls. So I was going to get 60 inches with 12 balls. Well, with the 3 of the other, that was going to give me another 10. So I was going to get my 70 inches. Basically, you only need 72 inches. So that allowed me, I said, I can eliminate that pink altogether. And although I would have to use that for a scarf or something like that, because it's only 7 balls of that or 6 balls of that. So I might use that pink to make a trashy shawl. It's enough to do that. So I may do that, the mesh trashy shawl. I'm quite sure I can do that, either the triangular or I can go with the rectangular, probably the triangular for the 7. I'll be able to do a triangle one because it doesn't have to come all the way down to a point. So I eliminated that. And then I decided, let me just take this herringbone down, and I'm going to go either with just a plain single or a half double crochet to make this. I know it's going to measure out perfectly, and I can use both colors because I have 3 of these. So 12 and 3, I'm going to do 12 rows, 2 rows, 12, 2. And I should have enough of these to do that because I'll be able to get, I can get 12 rows out of this. So actually, I could probably go 12, 4, 12, 4, like that. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So then preliminary number 2, I got a mail call, you guys. I'm not going to give out her name because I don't have permission to, but I will say that we were barter buddies, okay? We became yarn barter buddies or whatever, crochet barter buddies. I had an item from the liquidation store that she wanted, and she definitely had an item that I wanted. And y'all know what that was. Bing! The glow yarn. And so we bartered. We emailed each other and bartered. So she sent me a nice package of 10 glow yarns, which was beautiful. And I sent her 100 of the Joanne bags from that stash of 4,000 bags. In fact, I wanted to send more. In fact, I told her, if you need more, just holler. I will send more, but because of postage. And actually, the postage wasn't that bad because her state and my state are close. We'll put it that way. And so therefore, it didn't cost me as much as it should have if I was sending it to like California or somewhere far. And so therefore, now that I know the price for 100 bags, I can easily shoot her another 100 and it won't break the bank, okay? So she has that note. But if I had known she was going to do all what she did, I feel so bad because all I did, girl, was send you the yarn if you watching this. I mean, not the yarn. All I did was send you the bags. I didn't add no notes or anything other than I did let you know that if you need more, just holler. Okay, but anyway, she has paid attention. I'm hippie. So, of course, the bag is, you know, a hippie bag, so I'm keeping that. You know that. And she sent me some Sour Patches and Swedish Fish. And she sent me a little smiley face cloud. Isn't that cute? And I see it's like a rainbowish. And you guys, I love colors. And I love God's promise, the rainbow. That's what it represents to me. So I love rainbows when they in the sky. I filmed them, you know, all that stuff. And then I collect rainbow stuff because it's God's promise. And then look at there, y'all. She sent me a peace sign. What? Okay, I think, oh, these, guess what? These can go right on because they're like charms. So they have the little, I'm just now looking at this. Well, I looked at it, but I thought maybe it was a necklace. No, they're little charms. Guess what? I can add these right to this prayer shawl. The peace sign and a lizard. It's a lizard and a peace sign. So it's going right on this shawl. So thank you, Barter Buddy. You know who you are. And then she added a beautiful note. So here's the glasses, and then we'll get on to today's video. This is going to be at least a half hour, y'all. I'm out there grilling. And so I'm here in the back room. Okay. This is what she put. It's a note. It says, today I will do some things that are good for me. And that's what I need. And she put, and one of those things is sharing my blessings with you. So that's what she said. And so she said, thank you, Q, for being you. I love your energy, your spirit, and enjoy watching your videos. I can't wait to see what you make with this yarn. Enjoy and happiness always. Your Barter Buddy. She signed her name. I'm just saying, your Barter Buddy. This is so nice. So this is going to go on my fridge with my other notes that I've received over the years. And it will be laminated. I'll take it to Staples and have it laminated. And we'll save it forever. Okay, so let's see. What other... Okay, we talked about the yarn. We talked about the... Okay, so the preliminaries are over with now. Now, this is a pre-story video. Now, oh, happy Father's Day too. I know I have a few men here in the group. So, to those of you who are fathers, and to those of you who may have taken the place of... I mean, there's a lot of women who has had to step up to the role of almost like a father. If you're being both parents... You know, if a child has lost their father, for instance, my sister, you know, her husband passed away a couple of years ago, tragically and unexpectedly. I told y'all about that, electrocution. And her children are still young. Well, they're grown, but they're still young. Her one son just turned 30, so he's up there now. But the The other son, he's like 25 or 6, and her daughter was barely 20 when that happened. So, now she's the only parent. So happy Father's Day, okay? Sometimes, hey, that's the way it goes. So technically, this pre-story, I guess you would think it's going to be about my father, but actually it's not. And I forgot that Father's Day was this Sunday. Otherwise, I would have reserved this for his story. But we'll get to my father's story. But his story, like I mentioned, is going to be a little shorter. It's not going to be a mini series or anything. And I'll get to it. When you grow up with a father in your home like I did, I grew up in a two-parent family, as well as my cousins and all that. Your father's just your father, okay? So basically, his story just isn't as long. He did the father things, and worked and all that, So this would have been the perfect time to share his story, but I really hadn't gathered my thoughts because I forgot that today was Father's Day. But I had gathered my thoughts and decided I would tell the story of my centenarian friend. That's the one that I said this would be the one I would tell next after the Mom of the Miniseries. And this is going to be more than one part. So today is going to be a pre-story about him, and I will tell the story. We might can get it done in one shot, once I start the story, but I definitely need the pre-story to introduce you, tell you about them and all that. So let's get started. Okay, my centenarian friend, his name was Mr. Henry Columbus Andrews. He was born March, wait, when was his birthday? Hold on. Well, first of all, let me introduce you to him. I'll start off with the picture of him, his obituary. Of course, he's dead because he was born in 1899. And then I have a picture of him and me together. I'll show you that next. Let me see it because I don't want to get his birthday mixed up. He was born on March 12th, 1899, and he passed away September the 26th of 2001. We knew each other for just shy of 2 years. I met him in January of 2000, right after my father had passed away. And then he was actually the best friend I've ever had. But anyway, this is him. And this is a picture of him when he was in his late 80s or early 90s. That's the picture they used for his program. So this is Mr. Andrews. And then this is a picture of Mr. Andrews and I together at his birthplace. His father was an 89er in the land run of 1889 in Oklahoma. And so we're standing on the land that his father staked out during the Oklahoma land run. So there was some fame to all that, and that's part of history. And so Mr. Andrews was famous in the town of Langston. And like my friend Butch, they kept them tightly knit, so they couldn't really branch out. But we'll get to that story later because he was about to branch out before he passed away. I'll tell you about that because we had a book deal, you guys. That's a long story. Okay, but anyway, it says friends, and it's a picture of me and him. Look at me, y'all. That's me. This was in 2000. So I was 30, let's see. I was 36. Hold on. Wait, in 2000, let's see. Hold on. Let me count it up. I was born in 64, 74, 84, 94, 2004. So I was 36 years old in that picture. Yep. So that's me looking scholarly. And then that's Mr. Andrews standing next to me, looking at me. And we were on the land that his father staked out during the 1889 land run. So meet Mr. Henry Columbus Andrews, you guys. The best friend I've ever had. Okay, now, how that landed, and because at the time he was 100, he had just turned 101. At the time that picture was taken, he was 101. He died at 102. Okay, now, how, and what was so important about him are these two ladies. I'm going to introduce you to the late Delaney sisters. This is Bessie, and Mr. Andrews was in love with her, okay? I'm letting you know that now. This is Bessie Delaney, the late Bessie Delaney. She was a dentist. She was born in 1899, And then this was her sister, Sarah, who they called Sadie Delaney. You may have heard of the Delaney sisters. They became famous after they became centenarians. A lady approached them, a news lady approached them, and they did a news thing in the state of New York. They did because the youngest one was turning 100, and so she did a special report on the Delaney sisters, and people wanted to know more about them, and so they ended up, a book company contacted them and struck up a book deal, and this is the book. Okay, then there was a movie about them with the same title called Having Our Say. They wanted to have their say because they had never been able to tell their story. She was the first Black or first African-American teacher that taught domestic science in the state of New York, and she was the first Black female dentist in the state of New York. That's where they were living, or were they from? New York? I can't remember, but that's where they were at the time, in New York. And so because of that, they had made history, but no one really knew their story, only people who were around them and knew them personally. And so they became famous after the book came out. Well, what does this have to do with Mr. Andrews? Well, you know, the connection is the fact that they lived to be centenarians, and so did he. But this book, and this was before I met Mr. Andrews, this book actually changed the trajectory of my life. That's why this book is so important, and I have to tie it in with his story, because this book, now, back in the day, I worked for the school district. I started off working as a teacher assistant in special ed, so I worked in many schools and in all capacities of that. And then I went on to, I stopped working there. It wasn't a sabbatical. I actually resigned, and I took a job in the plant of all places, the automotive industry, because I wanted the big money. Okay. That was a nightmare. Well, when I was working at the plant, and I'll tell that story later, because woo-wee, whoa, now that's a story to tell and a mini series. But while I was working at the plant, I hired in the plant in 1992, and one of our machines had broke down. So when the machines broke down, you know, you can clean up around your area, but it's only so much you could do. And our machine ended up being down for the night. So they're not going to just let you go home because they got to pay you. So they just let you sit around for the night. So I always took my book, or I would take my crocheting to the plant. I told y'all about that during my Q&A thing. And so I didn't have my crocheting that night, but I had stopped at a bookstore. Back then I was an avid reader, and I always took a book with me. I always had a book with me that I would read during break or during lunch, or if the machine went down. You know, that happened, you know, it wasn't all the time where the machine would be down all night, but this was one of those nights, and it was the heat of the summer, and I had just picked up this book from a local bookstore, and when I saw it, I had no idea what it was about or anything. I just picked it up because it seemed interesting. When I saw first 100 years, I was like, oh, I've always wanted to meet somebody who's 100 years old, so I decided to buy this book. It changed the trajectory of my life, because when I read their story, they talked about how they went to college during a time when African Americans, that was unheard of. And for the few who went, they remember W.E.B. Du Bois considered them the talented 10th. Only a 10th were able to get a higher education during that time. Remember, they're born in the late 1800s, and their father was born into slavery. And I think the mother wasn't born into slavery, but their mother was biracial. But, you know, it was a thing. So she married their father. And then, so they, like our family, an array of colors and whatnot because of those times. But anyway, they were born in the late 1800s. So slavery was over with, but still, it was, you know, times were rough. But they were fortunate because their father was an Episcopal bishop or minister or something in the Episcopal church. And so they were able to stay at St. Augustine's. And I believe that was in, I want to say, I can't remember. don't, it's been a while since I've read the book, so don't quote me on it. But just pull up the Delaney sisters online and you'll see everything about them. They have famous members of their family that went on to do great things and stuff. And so they were the matriarchs of the family. Anyway, after I read the book and they talked about education and how hard they had it and how they achieved it, I thought to myself, because I have an aunt, she's still alive, and she's like 89 years old. We don't talk that often now because she has some memory issues and stuff. But we used to talk all the time. And my aunt used to tell me, you do not belong in the plant. You do not belong here. You do not belong there. You need to go to school. My aunt used to just stay on me about that. And I would be like, how am I going to school? I don't have the money for school and blah, 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 blah. And so my aunt was like, you need to find a way. You do not belong where you are. And she used to just always tell me that. And she was like, you're going to waste. She was like, you need to go to school. And so when I finally did it, of course, my aunt helped me and everything else. She just wanted me to do it. She wanted me to take that step to do it. And once I did that and I did it, here she comes. She helped me a great deal while I was in school. But anyway, I had even told her about this book. I was buying this book as gifts to people. I just felt that it had touched me in such a way that I felt that everybody should read this book, and I still feel that way. So if y'all can find it online, y'all could probably find it for a little or nothing online. Read the book. But it changed my life because when I saw what they went through, and they had happy lives, they didn't talk about things that were, they touched on a few things, but basically they had a life that was different from others and whatnot. They had a good life, a happy life. And then after, they became educated, their life was even more, happy and whatnot. But anyway, when I read about what they went through to go to school, I said, if the Delaney sister can do this, so can I. And then I started thinking about what my aunt had said and stuff. I was like, but how am I going to do it? I was revved up because I was working in that dirty, nasty plant. I hated every day of it. I eventually quit that job. That's a job that I walked off of and never looked back. And I'll tell y'all about that later when I tell y'all about my plant history. But this was during the early days of the plant. And I was like, but how can I do it? But the book had me thinking, and the whole time for the next, because I didn't quit the plant until 96. I read this book in 92 and I hired in 92. So 4 years later, they came out with the movie, which starred Diane Carroll, and I forgot the other lady who played the Ruby Dee. She played Bessie, and then Diane Carroll played Sadie. When I watched the movie, it was like reading the book all over again. I remember being excited about the movie. This was in 1999, in the summer or the spring of 99. I remember being excited about the movie, and I told my aunt, because my aunt had read the book and everything. I was like, and she just loved the book, of course, And then I was telling everybody, ooh, this movie is coming on. You got to watch it. You got to watch it, So my aunt said, I'm going to watch it. So I watched it that night that it came on. And when I watched it, actually, I recorded it because I was at work, because I worked afternoons. But I watched it that night when I got home from work. It was on a Friday or something like that. When I watched that movie, it was like reading a book all over again, because the actresses brought them to life and everything. And then they showed excerpts of both of them. And at that time, the internet wasn't out yet. I've since seen interviews done with them, actually, with them and whatnot. But so those two actresses really brought them to life. They captured the essence of the Delaney sisters for sure. But that movie, it was like reading a book. It fired up that same spark that I felt when the book itself had me thinking, okay, that night after I watched that movie, I was like, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to get to college, And so what happened was that night, I was like, okay. I was like, not only do I want to go to college, I want to meet somebody 100 years old who could tell me their life story and what they've done through their life, blah, 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 blah. That's where Mr. Andrews come in, okay? Well, a few months later, we went to Oklahoma. My mom, my uncle, and I, we traveled to Oklahoma. And it was right after that Moore tornado, the first one in 1999. So we went to Oklahoma for a week. And my father stayed home and everything. And so when we got to Oklahoma, my uncle was a professor at Langston University, and he's like, I'm gonna take you to go tour the campus. He was like, I just want you to see it. It never even dawned on me. Oh, let me back up. After I saw the movie and everything, and I was thinking of, and it lit the fire in me. I lie to you not. And this was the first time I ever did it, because y'all see how big I am, and I was big. I was even bigger back then. So when Q prayed, Q, like I do now, and any other time I pray where I stand, okay? If I was to pray right now, I'd be like this. I never got on my knees to pray, because I didn't know if I'd be able to get up off that darn floor. That night, after I saw that movie, and I'm thinking, I got to do this. I've got to at least give it a try. I got on my knees. I went right into my bedroom, got down on my knees. It took me a while to get up, but I got on my knees and I said, God, I'm asking you. I said, I don't ask for much. I said, but I'm asking you. I said, for two things. I said, I want to be able to go to college, if it ain't but for a day. I said, just to say that I went. I said, and I would love to meet a centenarian, somebody who's 100 years old. I said, that's all I'm asking for. Didn't think no more of it. But it was a sincere prayer. I think that was probably the most sincere prayer I had ever said, to where I just felt it. My whole soul felt it. And so we go to Oklahoma, and my uncle tells me, I'm going to take you to tour Langston where I work. I want you to see this, And so when we got there, we toured it. Then he took me up to the administration's office, and I'm thinking, oh, he's a professor, so he wants me to meet his friends, which I did. I met a lot of his friends, coworkers and colleagues and distinguished people and all that, the president. So we went up to this one office, and it was the admissions office. And my uncle introduced me to this man. I forgot his name. And so when he introduced me he said, I want my niece to enroll here. And I'm still not thinking about the prayer or nothing like that. And so I'm like, Uncle Worth, how am I going to enroll here? And he told his friend, explain to her the program that they just started. It was a non-traditional student program. It was a second chance program for people who were beyond college age. They had the program, you come just like you're 18 years old. And that's just what I did. You stay in the dorms for the first year, just like an 18-year-old. And the only thing they made an exception for was I could have a vehicle, because freshmen could not have a vehicle on that campus, at least. But they allowed for the non-traditionals to have a vehicle, but we had to spend our first semester in the dorm. So to get the full college experience, they claimed, and I did it. But we'll get to that when we get to my actual college story, because that's another thing. But anyway, so they had me to fill out the application, and so the guy was like, are you interested? I was like, yeah, if y'all accept me. And I'm thinking, what was my grade point average in high school? Oh my God, because I was bullied. I dropped out of school. That's a whole long story. But I did go back, and I didn't get a GED. I did get a high school diploma, and I did bring my GPA up. But when I went to adult ed, to bring that up, I didn't bring that up to nothing big. It was just enough for me to graduate, because I had dropped out in my 12th grade year due to being bullied. So anyway, I'm like, I don't know what my GPA is. I was like, and then they told me I had to take the ACT and SAT and all this stuff. I was like, I can't do this. I've been out of school. I had been out of school like 17 years at that time, in 99, because I graduated in 83, and I should have graduated in 82. I came out a year late after I dropped out. So it had been well over, it was like 15, 16 years. And I hadn't done any schooling since then other than self-educating. I love to learn about stuff. I was always reading about different things. And that's why my aunt told me I was going to waste. She was like, you are educating yourself. She was like, you just need to do it, in a school. So anyway, I said, okay, I'll do it. And I filled out the application. So they told me I would hear from them like within a month whether or not I'm accepted. And then they said you would have to come to Oklahoma and take the ACT and SAT. So when I came home, everything, they gave me the portfolio, everything about the school and stuff. Then I had to send in an essay explaining why I felt that coming to college now at this late age, what do I plan to do with this opportunity of a lifetime, and why I feel I should be selected for the non-traditional student program, because they were only selecting a handful of students. I think it was like 6. And a lot of people had applied, a lot of people. And so with me being from out of state, I didn't really think I had a chance. And like I said, I never thought about, I don't know why. I think God blocked my brain. I think he didn't want me to realize he was answering my prayer, because he would have known I would have gotten laxed with it or something. I don't know. But my brain was blocked. I never thought about the Delaney sisters, nothing like, I didn't think about the prayer, nothing like that. So I did all the stuff they asked of me. And so then a month later, I got a letter of acceptance. So they told me I would need to be there December 1st to do the ACT and SAT. And they said that would determine the classes that I would be placed in. So I was in, but I didn't know where I would be. It depended on my score. So, of course, math. I cannot do math. So I knew I was going to be remedial for that. But everything else, I felt I had a shot, because I had always been a good reader. I had always been good in English. I was good in history. That was, my subject. Well, not my subject, but it was something I was interested in. Science, oh my God. In fact, my science professor told me in college, he was like, because his mother was a professor, my math professor, and he was my science professor. He was like, I know what grade you're getting in my mother's class, because I ended up having to go to the junior college to finish off the math, and I never did finish that. That's a long story. But in the remedial math, it was there at the college, and I was failing her class. I could not get it. Get me to multiplication, and that's where it ended, okay, for me. And people would tell me, don't say you can't. You're blocking your brain and blah, blah, blah. You just have to. I could not do it. Even as a kid, from childhood on, I never was good in math. It is what it is. And that's what I would tell people. You can't be good in everything. I don't care what grades I get in everything else. I was average or above average. I was like, but math, hey, it's not my subject. And so I knew that was going to be a problem. Anyway, he said, you're passing my science class with an A. He was like, and then you're failing my mother's class. He was like, science is math. He said, you're doing calculations. You're doing these things that we're doing, and whatnot. You're answering it. He said, that's math. Why is it? I was like, I don't know. I just don't know. But anyway, I spun off into a third story, okay? Anyway, I got in. So, of course, math, remedial. Everything else, I tested pretty much average. So, I had to be there December 1st for the ACT and SAT. So that month, I'm still working as a custodian in the school system, and I'm being teased by my coworkers. What you going to college for? You'll never make it. You're not even college material. I told y'all before. I was told that by people. People said, you're not smart enough for college. People had the damn nerves to look you in your face and tell you how your brain works, okay? I might be goofy and kooky, but one thing I wasn't was stupid and dumb, okay? I did pretty good in school until the bullies, took it out of me or whatever. I flunked on purpose to get away from the bullies. That's why I eventually dropped out of school. But anyway, that's a long story. But anyway, I swore after I got grown, I said, I will never be bullied again. Because even in that plant, they tried to target me and bully me. And oh no. I said, I'll never allow that again. And I will never let nobody, I will never dumb down for anybody ever again in life. That's what I said. I am who I am, and I'm going to do what I do. And hey, if it's something that comes off wise, fine. If it comes out dumb, it's because of me. It won't be because someone else has dictated. You going to keep your mouth shut. I was always a good reader in school. And that's what, that was the reason why I was bullied. The teacher always, and you know what, I would come up with a reason to not read. My throat is sore, or I start coughing, something to keep from reading. The teacher always called on me because most of the people that I went to school with, they were either basic. They didn't read with the expression, or they couldn't read at all. And every other word somebody had to sound it out for them, that type of thing. I read fluently and I read with expression and whatnot. In fact, that landed me commercials in college, but that's another story. Okay, but anyway, I was able to read fluently and with expression, so teachers always called on me to read, and those kids targeted me. Ooh, they hated me. They hated me because of it. And so I would try to not read because I knew this was the reason why I was being, we go to other classes or outside or wherever outside of the classroom. Oh, they let me know when no one's. So I learned quickly, I better shut this down. I started skipping and everything else to keep from having to read in class, because the teacher, I don't care. I didn't have to raise my hand. The teacher, Kiwetta, you got to read, blah, 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 because we need it read just like the way you're going to read it. And the students they be looking at me like, oh, just wait. Then remember this in the 70s? If somebody did this to you, you knew you were getting your behind kicked that day. So, enough was enough. Okay. I'm going through trauma. Okay. Let me get on off of that. So anyway, but I swore that wasn't going to happen to me again. So I decided, getting into this college, I'm going to do my best and whatnot. I will tell you this before we go any further. From the first semester, I had a 3.5 GPA. I mean, I worked hard. And I avoided math until I could no longer avoid it. So I wasn't even taking math. I was taking everything else. I was like, if I can get A's in everything, A's and B's, then when I get the math and fail it, at least that F will keep me at least a C average. That was my strategy, okay? So I'm making A's and B's. So the first semester, 3.5. Then it stayed like at 3.5, and then it climbed a little bit. I got an award. I got on the dean's list. I got a scholarship, all this stuff during my course. At the end, when I came out of there sick with that first MS flare, which I didn't know was MS at the time, I had a 3.7. I was shooting for a 4.0, but I didn't think I would get it because of the math business. But I left college. I have a standing GPA of 3.7. Okay, so there you have it, and it was earned. Okay, oh no, no corners cut, none. I earned that, so that's my proudest accomplishment. But anyway, so and the Delaney sisters. But okay, now, how far are we? Okay, let me hurry up and get this wrapped up. Okay, so I get to Oklahoma. I finally get there. So then my father died my very first day of school. So hey, that's how it happened. I got to Oklahoma. Well, actually, I got to Oklahoma December the 1st. My first day of school was, I had to do the ACT. And like I said, I tested average and everything for that, with the exception of the math. Okay, the first day of school was actually the 18th of January of 2000, but my first day was the 19th of January of 2000, because I had to do orientation on the 18th, take my school ID photo and stuff, but I didn't have classes. Some students did, some didn't. I didn't have any classes on the 18th. My classes started that Wednesday, which was the day, that was a Wednesday, the 19th of January of 2000. I'll never forget that. And so my classes didn't start till the next day. So I did orientation the day before, and that next day I started class. And so this is January 19th, 2000. And so that was the day my father died. And I didn't find out until later that evening. I'm in the dorms and everything, and I'm not even going to get into his death. I'll tell that story when I tell the story about my father. But just know he died on my very first day of college. So, of course, this was the second and last time I was getting on an airplane, but I flew. And I haven't flown since and never plan to fly again. I don't fly. But I had to fly home for my father's funeral. My uncle and I flew back to Michigan. He died Wednesday. We left that next evening, and my father's funeral was that Saturday, and then we flew back. And that was it for me. I said, I don't care who died. I said, I'll never get on an airplane again. They're going to have to wait for me. I'll have to walk, flap wings and fly, Or I was like, it would be an extenuate. Someone would have to tell me you coming to Hollywood or whatever. And that might be the only reason I might get on a plane again. And that has nothing to do with these plane crashes lately. That's just confirmation for me, okay? But I don't fly. I never liked heights, not flying. So anyway, I flew for that. Okay, so I get back. And I was so bereaved. I was upset. Oh, it was horrifying because I had actually dreamt my father's death before it happened. I think I told y'all about that. I dreamt it, and I wasn't going to Oklahoma. I had decided I would sit out a semester and start that next September because they told me I could do that. Everybody said, oh, no, you not. You'll chicken out. At that point and whatnot, they were like, no, you're going, and you're going now. You will never get an opportunity like this again. And my uncle said, we don't know how long this non-traditional program is going to last. They may decide to end it next year and you will be grandfathered in. He said, you have to come now. And so I went, and my father died. And that's what really killed me about all that, because the plan, I had wanted to sit out a semester because my father had started ailing. He had, some health issues, and I had dreamt that he had died. Called my mother like 2 weeks before I left, crying in the middle of the night, telling her, he's going to die. I don't want to leave, blah, 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 blah. And like I said, I was talked into going anyway. And I went, and then he died. Oh, my God. Just the way I dreamt it, too. I dreamt my mother had come home from work and found him dead. And that's exactly what happened. Y'all know I was jacked up, okay? So I get back from the funeral and everything, and I'm back here at college. I'm like, God, how am I supposed to do this? I still never thought about the Delaney sisters or the prayer, nothing. And I'm like, how am I supposed to do this? And that seems so selfish of me to not think about the prayer that I had prayed. And I guess God just had to put it in my face, because when the light bulb went off, it went off, okay? And when it went off, I was like, oh, this is it. I'm making the best of this, okay? Anyway, look at me. I'm getting all excited, and because it was just so beautiful, okay? Anyway, we're getting to that part now. I get back and I'm like, God, how am I supposed to do this? I can't concentrate on schoolwork. I just lost my father. I'm worried about my mother. I'm here, oh, this is horrible. It was horrible. I even went to grief counseling. I did all this stuff. And so I went to grief counseling. I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? I was behind a week and a half because of the funeral and stuff, because I had a week off. So from that Wednesday, I didn't have to go to class until like that next Wednesday. We got back that Sunday night or Monday, and I had to be in class Wednesday, so I'm like, how am I going to do this, and whatnot. And so this was it was in January. Now, in Oklahoma, that particular January, it was like summertime. It was like 70 degrees every day. Everybody was in shorts, no coats. It just got dark early. That's the only thing. And then it got deathly cold. But it was nothing like Michigan. We left a snowstorm coming back to Oklahoma. That's the only reason probably why I came back, because I wasn't going to come back. But I was like, I don't think I want to be in this 25 feet of snow. So we went on back to summertime, okay? Anyway, it was so warm. One day I was like, because I knew it was a lake around. Langston Lake was like a mile up the road or something like that. And I asked one of the people that I had met, I was like, where's the lake and where can I buy bait? I want to go fishing, And so they told me, they were like, oh, you have to visit Mr. Andrews. He sells the bait in Langston. And they gave me his address. And so I was like, well, do you have to call first? They were like, no, just knock on his door. He'll come to the door. You tell him you want to buy some bait and blah, blah, blah. He's only charges $1 for worms because he, I don't know how he got his worms, but he did. But anyway, so I go to the house, to the address that they gave me. I knock on the door, and it took a while because no. His niece and nephew were there on the porch. A gray-haired man, because they were full, Mr. Andrews, his mother was full-blooded Native American, and his father was part. So they looked almost like Native Americans. Well, the nephew, he had wavy black hair, long, and he and his wife were sitting on the porch. And then, of course, she's black. And so I was like, I'm here to see Mr. Andrews. So I'm thinking this is Mr. Andrews. No one told me anything about him other than he's the man who sells worms. So the nephew, this is his nephew. He's like, oh, you're talking about my uncle. And so he's like, I'm Mr. Andrews too, but that's my uncle. I was like, your uncle? I'm looking at all this gray hair. And then she's totally gray. He said, yes, I'm his nephew. He said, Uncle Henry is my uncle. I was like, how old are you? I'm knowing they at least in their 70s. He goes, I'm 80 years old. My wife is 79. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm thinking like my mother, because my mother had a brother 20 years older than her. So my mother had a nephew older than her and a niece her age. So I'm thinking it's one of those deals. Okay, you and your uncle grew up. I mean, you and your uncle grew up together, so y'all like brothers or whatever. Mr. Andrews, all of a sudden he comes up to the door and I'm looking at him. And this man, he had a surprised look on his face. He's looking at me just like this. And I'm looking at him like this. And I'm like, something's weird here. Something's weird. I feel it because my soul started stirring, okay? And so he said, my uncle is 100 years old. At the time, he was still 100. I'm like, no. He was 101. He said, my uncle is 101 years old. And then this man looking at me like this. And I'm like, why is he looking at me so surprised? I'm the one who need to be surprised. That's when the light bulb went off. I said, I'm here in college. I'm actually a college student. And I'm sitting up here meeting a centenarian. That was my prayer. So he was like, come on in, come on in. You know how, older, centenarians talk. Okay. So I went in. I sat down at the kitchen table. He's like, sit down. We talking. I introduced myself. He introduced himself. And we sitting up there talking as if we known each other all our lives. And I was like, I came to buy some worms. He was like, I want you to come back. And he called me Davis. He's like, Davis, I want you to come back. I was like, Andrews, I will be back. I was like, you just don't know, buddy. I was like, I'll be back. And I was like, what's a good day? I said, because you're 100 years old. I know that, you probably need. He's like, come back anytime. I don't care. He said, except on Sundays. I'm in church on Sunday. I was like, okay. I was like, I'll be back I think I told him next Wednesday. Tuesday. I didn't have classes on Tuesday. I said, I'll be back next Tuesday. I don't have classes on that day. I said, I will be back. And so his niece and nephew, when I left, they're looking at me. So I talked to them and they were like, they were like, where you from? I said, I just moved from Pontiac, Michigan, and I'm in a non-traditional program. So they knew all about Langston and stuff. They were like, really? They were like, so you had to have gotten in some kind of way. He was like, to be from that far and know about this program. They were like, who your kinfolk? I was like, my uncle is Dr. Worth Hatley. He's like, Worth is your uncle? I was like, yeah, that's my mother's brother. They were like, oh man, they had been friends with my aunt and uncle for years and years. In fact, they all went to school together and whatnot. So they knew each other very well. And that was it. That was the beginning of the friendship, y'all, because they knew my aunt and uncle. They trusted me immediately, and they had every right to trust me. So I would see them, they came, back and forth from Oklahoma City. They lived right around the corner from my uncle. So I would go to their house, and sometimes they come over to my uncle's house. So we were all like one big happy family after, the introduction. And then on top of that, here I was acquainted with the centenarian. So that's your pre-story, you guys. I got to stop it somewhere because we're almost at an hour with just the pre-story. Anyway, it blossomed from there. And so I will start the story. We'll begin it with my next visit after that. Boy, when I tell you, it is the journey of a lifetime. It's the most important journey other than the caregiving journey with my mother. It is the most important. In fact, I think that tops my mother's caregiving journey. It's the most important journey I had ever been on. And I know it was all spiritual and whatnot. It was a whole spiritual type journey. That's the only way I could describe it. And just let me tell the story. So we're going to end this here because we're almost at an hour. Wait, or are we? Wait, hold on. Okay, we're at 49 minutes. So we're almost at an hour. So we're going to end it here. But no, this is going to be the story of a lifetime with Mr. Andrews. It was just the most fascinating experience of my life. Okay, so that's it. So I'm going to get off of here because the smoke has stopped in the grill, so I need to go stoke the fire. And I will talk to you guys later. And may God bless you all. See you in the next one. I don't know if it'll be next Sunday when I continue. Y'all let me know. Do y'all want me to continue the story on Wednesday or Sunday? Y'all let me know. Okay. Bye-bye. Or next Sunday, rather. Okay. Bye-bye.